Jeff Passan just dropped an absolute bombshell Dodgers trade report that would break the MLB. We get you the latest updates on the availability of Tarik Skubal this offseason and why the Dodgers are a perfect landing spot. Welcome to Dodgers Digest, everybody. I'm Jace Andrews, and I appreciate you hanging out with me in today's show. Let's get right into it, why don't we? Because this is a juicy one. ESPN, which involves Jeff Passan, and his article talked about the top 25 players that could be traded in the 2025-26 MLB offseason. Now, I will preface before I get too far into this is not a ranking of the most likely to be traded player to the least likely, but rather of 25 players that could be traded, ranking the best to the worst. And of course, Jeff Passan, he is the creme de la creme when it comes to MLB insiders. In fact, I've gotten to the point where John Morosi, John Hyman, Bob Nightingale, who cares? All these reporters can say a lot of stuff, but unless Jeff Passan goes into it, I'm not going to 100% jump full in and deep dive believe it. But when Jeff says it, man, oh man, do I get a little bit excited. And that's kind of where we go today, because number one on his top 25 list of players that could be traded is Tarik Skubal, which, of course, the Cy Young back-to-back for the first time in the American League since 1998-99, I believe. And Skubal is the premier guy that could be traded this offseason. Now, the question becomes, will he? What's the latest and kind of what is going on in Detroit? And so this report still stands tall from Matthew Corey. When the talks were going on between the Detroit Tigers and Tarik Skubal in terms of an extension offer, the offer the Tigers made to Skubal was lower than $80 million for 4 years. Yeah, I'm not taking $80 million for, no. This would leave the two sides facing a gap more than $320 million apart. This, of course, sparked up new rumors and further increased the likelihood that he would be traded. But however, what does Detroit have to say about this? And that's kind of where we have to look into this, because ultimately, we can say that they're far apart on their contract talks, or they're this or they're that, but the Detroit Tigers intend to contend next year in the American League. And Tarik Skubal is a big part of that at just 29 years old. He had a 2.21 earned run average, a whip below 0.9 at 0.891, had 195 innings pitched, 18 homers, just allowed 6.5 hits per 9, striking out 241 batters. And you can say all you want about how close of a race it was in the American League Cy Young, but Tarik Skubal is far and away the best pitcher, he was far and ahead of Garrett Crochet. Now, again, this means it would take a hefty price for the Detroit Tigers to let him go, on top of which the Tigers obviously want to keep this team as solid as possible to put themselves back into a playoff contending position next year, in which they were, a couple outs away or so from getting to the American League Championship Series. So what does Jeff Passan have to say about this? What was his report? Well, here is the initial part. The buzz is what he called this. Quote, despite several executives believing Skubal will move, the Tigers have shown no sign of deviation from their position that the back-to-back American League Cy Young winner will stay in Detroit. Though he's a free agent after the 2026 and contract extension discussions have gone nowhere, Skubal is the Tigers' centerpiece player, and Detroit intends to contend again next season, end quote. All this is well and good, and the Detroit Tigers can put on a very fun face to the media and to pretty much everybody out there. But the point that I see here, and something that Passan goes into, is that ultimately, Tarik Skubal is 30 years old, and right now his value is higher than anybody on potentially major leagues, higher than anybody. The Tigers could get a fortune for him, and especially if they see nowhere that this quote-unquote extension talks are going, I believe it might be wise for them to trade him, / they might rethink it come after the winter meetings. And of course, if they do rethink it, well, Jeff Passan has us covered with the top team fits for Tarik Skubal. And while the Dodgers are not the number one team in line to land him, they are certainly top two, as the Mets are the team to watch first, then the Dodgers, Orioles, Yankees, Red Sox, and Giants are all listed as contending teams for Tarik Skubal. Again, though, it would cause a hefty price. And I think the biggest thing for LA is whether he's made available or not, that's a great thing. Their rotation is already in a very solid spot. Sleeper Dodgers, kind of talking about the predicted, Dodgers opening day rotation of Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the World Series MVP, Blake Snell, a guy who had a fantastic season when he was healthy, Shohei Ohtani, the best player on planet Earth. The potential is there for Tyler Glasnow to be traded, but as of right now, he is still on the roster. Emmett Sheehan, and then Roki Sasaki, along with Gavin Stone and River Ryan, who are also expected to be ready for spring training, and the potential is there for them to find their ways in the rotation as well. This is a very good starting rotation, so is it worth it for the Dodgers standpoint to go out and land Tarik Skubal? Yes, of course it is. While I understand the premise is there for the Dodgers, knowing that they have a very, very good starting rotation and that they don't necessarily need it, the amount of injuries they had this past season and kind of going back to it, if they are really willing to trade away Tyler Glasnow, this cannot be ignored. Are you kidding me? Baseball Savant is where I go for my fully in-depth knowledge, and there has never been a better Baseball Savant page than Tarik Skubal's. His red and percentiles are off the charts. Literally, there's only a couple things that he's quote-unquote not good at, which in that he's just at the 50th percentile, which is extension, which is one of the more useless ones on this, ground ball percentage, whatever, and barrel percentage, which basically all this is jargon to say that when somebody does get a good wood on it, it does go pretty far because, well, he throws pretty fast as well. But also, the point being, people don't touch it that often. So it doesn't matter if the barrel percentage is high or the ground ball percentage is low. Guess what? They don't touch the ball that often. So in that reality, it doesn't matter. Now, I have to kind of ask this as a baseball question more than a Dodgers question, but in terms of Tarik Skubal, what do you think are the odds that he gets traded this offseason? Obviously, we had a bunch of reports coming out. I know in my mind the Tigers would be wise to really consider it and see what they could get, especially if their extension talks are going nowhere. But I want you to scale this on the odds of Tarik Skubal getting traded, 1 being least likely, 10 being most likely. Let me know in the comment section your thoughts. Personally, I'd say it's probably a 4 still. I think I'm getting closer to that 5, but at the end of the day, Tarik Skubal is a very good pitcher, and if the Detroit Tigers, for whatever reason, keep him this year and continue on with it, and then lose him the next offseason for $1 bazillion to whoever, I don't know if they're going to be amazingly upset, but I know at the same time, if next year goes and they don't compete in the way they think they are, and then you have Tarik Skubal at the trade deadline, things could change. I think there's just a lot of intrinsic policies to this, and to me, if I'm the Tigers and I know that I am 200 or 300 million off of a contract extension number with him, I'm looking at trade offers right now. I am. And for the Dodgers, they have pretty much everybody you can offer. And I mentioned this earlier on in the video, but ultimately I do think there is something to note about this, and that's the final thing that Jeff Passan says in his Skubal report. Quote, "How long can Skubal, who turns 30 after the 2026 season, keep this up?" Question mark, end quote. There is a valid point there. Tarik Skubal is a fantastic pitcher, the first guy to win back-to-back Cy Youngs in over 2 decades in the American League. However, he is 30 years old. He is a guy who, not to say this could happen, but pitchers sometimes could just lose it. Do I think that's going to happen to Skubal? Not even a chance. But it is something to note, and it is something to worry about with contract extensions, all that. And from the Dodgers' perspective, they could trade for him and potentially extend him. And I mean, if you get a good value for him, depending on what happens, you could also keep him this season, get your 3-peat, and worry about it after that, especially with the 2027 CBA coming into agreement. So it's an intriguing thought, and I'm curious to see the way it goes. But Jeff Passan talks about it a lot. We'll keep you updated on everything related to the Los Angeles Dodgers here today on Dodgers Digest. But for now, we're going to see you next time on the show. Peace out, guys.